Good morning and welcome to our live talk program. This is Lloyd Grubb here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our live talk program covering natural health. And this year, Wednesday morning, rise and shine and give God the glory. And this morning here, we're looking at this important topic, getting your highs from beneficial things. Getting your highs from beneficial things. So I have an article and some thoughts I want to share with you on where to get your highs, your kicks, your pleasure, your secret pleasure, whatever it is. So welcome again. Hopefully you had a blessed night rest and ready to take on today. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, I thank you for the blessings of this day, for this your word, and for the wisdom that you bestow in our minds and our hearts. I pray that you may bless me as I communicate these things, and may your grace continue to go with me. I pray for Christ's sake. Amen. So again, we're looking at this thing, getting your highs from beneficial things. And so it's important to receive a blessing or your blessings and your happiness and your joy from things that's going to be beneficial to you and long term. They will not destroy your mind or body. And so this is what we want to do in life. And the more we receive life this way, the more we receive of things in this manner, then it is more that we don't find ourselves into bad paths that are very destructive to our minds and our bodies. And this is where we want to be. And so as you look at the ongoing problem with the opioid epidemic is what I'm going to read about. But I talk about this much because it has to do with, to me, it's appetite or passion on steroids. And it gives you a very insightful peek into the human mind and into how addictions or bad behaviors work. And so to me, I look at this as just very important part of how we understand the human behavior on the sin and how our desires can lead us away, our pleasure receptors can lead us away into path of destruction. So it's important. And so before I go into that article, I'm just going to share 2 points of information here. And number one is, wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging. Whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. This is found in Proverbs chapter 20, verse 1. Now, when you think about this text, the obvious reason why this text is often read, for me at least, is the idea of wine. When you think about it now in connection with my topic, getting your highs from things that are beneficial. So a person who would get a high from wine, they will receive benefits in the sense that, there's resveratrol and stuff like that in wine. But also they will receive an addiction because it's going to make them feel good. But it makes more to make them feel good, the more it adds not only calories, high amount of calories to their system, but also it add damage to the liver and so forth. So it is benefiting them, but it is also giving damage. So if this person now, a person, anyone, say, find something else that's beneficial, say pomegranate juice, and they come to a point where they love pomegranate juice, and if they drink a gallon or eat a whole bunch of pomegranates within a week, it will not add anything to their weight. It will not add any damage to their liver, kidney, anywhere. It will not give them any type of urinary tract infection, and it will make them be healthy and they will glow. Now they have something that is you could call a habit. It's a pleasure. It's a love. It's a desire, and it is beneficial. And that's, to me, is the quick example. And as I say, pomegranate juice just came to me as a thought. And so you could apply this to just about anything else that is beneficial and it will not damage the system. And if it's beneficial and not damage the system, then what it is that if you overconsume of it or consume high volumes of it, you don't have to worry about this stuff here is going to mess me up. But in certain pleasure-seeking things, what it is not so much the problem of having pleasure. The problem is the dangers that come with certain substances or certain bad habits, and why you have to either limit or abstain from and then find a substitute. And so when we find substitutes, all we're doing is just substituting out something that is causing great danger for something healthier. This can be applied to just about anything in health. You could take that for anything that you eat, anything that you drink. any lifestyle practices that you practice. Some things has to be abstained from and you find a substitute, or some things have to be limited but still partake of, because too much or participating will create an habit. Because anything that brings us massive pleasure is something that simply will get us addicted. It's just, if certain things, if you're addicted to, it is not, it's not going to cause you a harm. If you are a apple junkie and you just constantly want to eat apple, God bless you. Eat it by the box load, and if that's not satisfactory enough, arrange with somebody to order a shipment, and they drop it at your house by the skid load. You get a truckload at a time, and you partake of apple. And instead of having one apple a day, you probably have 10, 20 apples a day. You're going to keep the doctors very far away. But if you're participating of, say, cocaine, and you have it delivered to your house by the skid load, you're going to be in out of serious problem in your brain, in your nostril, all kind of problem. And so it is, but it's not just stopping. It's finding something that you can find pleasure in, and it is not dangerous to you. And when you do this, it finds that life is much better. So if you look at again, Proverbs 20 verse 1, which I often read, wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. This is not something that's worth getting hooked up on or using, because we as human beings all have this ability inside of us to have habits, or to have bad, not only bad habit, but just habits in general, not good or bad. We're habit forming creatures. We're creatures that do things repetitively. And because of this, and then we have not just habit, we have an addicted side, because when we do something and we find it to be very pleasurable or very intriguing, because we do things that sometimes they're not very per se pleasurable, but we find it intriguing, like solving a puzzle. But if you solve a puzzle all day long, it is something that you do. It can be a waste of time, so to speak. You're not accomplishing anything, but it's not going to cause much harm, probably more than just burning your time and so forth. But when you take up now something that is causing you physical harm, causing you social, spiritual harm, then you say, well, I'm going to need to substitute this and then find something else. So it's best to start off this way. And if you go this way, then life is better. I'll read another one before I go on. In Proverbs 1 verse 29, God says, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of the tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. And so if you read it and you follow what the Bible is saying, you come to this realization that when we partake of fruits, whatever fruits you like, if you partake of it unlimited, it is something that it will hit your pleasure sensors. You will have a good experience, but it will not cause any ill effect. Overconsumption, so to speak, of fruits doesn't cause an ill effect. You're not going to get constipated. You're not going to get any type of colon cancer, any type of liver cancer, any type of cancer. It will be very positive inside of your digestive tract. It will be positive for your mind, your body, all positives. As long as it's natural, all positive. But if you do the same, say with rice, RICE, or with wheat, or with what we say, just about most things, you'll find that it will not work just the same way. If you overconsume nuts, you will have too much fat in your system, and you start to have to exercise just to burn that fat. So there are certain things that you can do that if you do it even to an excess, it doesn't cause damage. There's other things you do, if you do it even to a minute amount, it will cause severe damage or problem in your system. Notice here, appetite. What is appetite? Appetite is a natural desire to satisfy bodily need, especially for food. A strong desire or liking for something. So have an appetite for whatever. It could be for food. It could be for any type of bodily need. It could be for bodily pleasure. And so it's a simple all appetite. You have a desire for something or a liking for something. And it's the brain also goes on the stimulation. Your brain, as I speaking now, I'm communicating information to you, but when communicated a certain way, and as they proverbially say or colloquially say, the light bulb go off. That's actually, you can have an appetite for that. You can have an appetite for mental stimuli. And that can be a good thing. That can be a bad thing. You could get to a point where you're just a junkie for information, but you're not doing anything with information. But we all have some type of appetite, and as long as the appetite is something that is good, that when you do it, it doesn't cause any harm and actually is beneficial. This is what you want to do. You want to participate in things that are like that. So here I have this article before I move on to more information there. More stuff I want to talk about there. About, again, my topic is getting your highs from beneficial things. Because when you get your highs from beneficial things, then you don't have to worry about a lot of these problems that comes about when we deal with drugs. And I said drugs is a very interesting show, because what drugs does is shows you how a bad habit can be so powerful. And somebody said, well, is it all drugs? No, because again, we're talking about appetite, because you can see a person hit 250 pounds, 250 pounds, then they hit 300 pounds, 350, and then just keep going. And you realize they're in the same predicament as the opiate user. They're just constantly, and you see someone like that, look around them. They have some food hiding somewhere on them. It's you're not hitting 300, 400 pounds, and you're not having food all over the place. And somebody say, you're talking about a person 6'6"? No, I'm not. I'm talking about a 5'5", 250, 300 pounds, 400 pounds. So there's some food hanging around there. So they're feeding the appetite, they're receiving pleasure, but the pleasure is causing some ill effect. So we have to deal with that. So it's the same thing. It's just we all have some type of appetite that we have to address. It's just the drugs seem to be the more obvious one, but all of us deal with addictions and appetite, just in our where we're wired. Now, in a peek, so this article is taken from NBCnews.com on the health section. A peek into opiate users' brain as they try to quit. One question researchers want to answer: do addiction medication do more than ease craving and withdrawal symptoms? Lying inside a scanner, the patient watched as pictures appear one by one: a bicycle, a cupcake, heroin. Outside, researchers track her brain's reaction to the surprise sight of the drugs she'd fought to kick. Government scientists are starting to peek into the brains of people caught in the nation's opiate epidemic to see if medication proven to treat addiction, like methadone, do more than ease the craving and withdrawal. Do they also have brain damage by addiction, and which one works best for which patient? They're fundamental questions, considering that far too few of the 2 million opiate users who need anti-addiction medicine actually receive it. One reason people say you are just changing one drug for another, says Dr. Nora Volkow, director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, who is leading that first of its kind study. The brain responds differently to those medication than to heroin. It's not the same. Science has made clear that 3 medication, methadone, buprenorphine, and extended release naltrexone, can effectively treat what specialists prefer to call opioid use disorder. Patients who stick with methadone or buprenorphine in particular cut their chance of death in half, according to a report by the National Academy of Science, Engineering and Medicine that explore how to overcome barriers to that care. Opiate addiction changed the brain in ways that even when people quit can leave them vulnerable to relapse, changes that researchers believe lessen the long-term abstinence. Volkow's theory: medication-based treatment will help those damaged neural network start getting back to normal faster than going it alone. To prove it, she's now comparing brain scan from study participant like the woman who quit heroin thanks to methadone with active heroin users and people who are in early stage of treatment. Can we completely recover? I do not know that, Volko said, but with the medication you're creating stability in the brain, she says, and that helps recondition to respond to everyday pleasure again. The challenge now is finding enough people willing and healthy enough to have their brain scanned for science at the same time they're struggling to quit. Addiction is a brain disease, not a choice, not a personality flaw, not a moral falling, says Dr. Jody Glantz, an addiction specialist at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, who hopes NIDA's brain scan will help overcome some of the barriers and improve the public health response with the opioid crisis. Not offering the medication to someone who needs them is like not offering insulin to someone with diabetes. When you are sent something pleasurable, when you send something pleasurable, a special song, the touch of a loved one, a food like Volker's favorite chocolate, the brain releases a natural chemical called dopamine that essentially trains the brain to remember. Like that, let's do it again. So this is what they're saying the brain is. I'll come back to that later. That's the brain reward system. The opiate can hijack it by triggering a surge of dopamine larger than nature ever could. Repeated opiate use overloads circuits in multiple brain regions, including those involved with learning and memory, emotion, judgment, and self-control. At the same time, the brain gradually releases less dopamine in response to other things the person once found pleasurable. Eventually, they seek more of the drug, not to get high, but to avoid constant feeling low. Volker's aim to test 80 people, a mix of untreated heroin users and patients using different medication-based treatment, inside brain scanners at the National Institute of Health Research Hospital. Her team is measuring difference in the brain's ability to release dopamine as treatment progresses and how the functioning of other neural network changes in response to as study patients do various tasks. For example, does a patient brain remain fixated on cues related to drug use, like seeing a picture of heroin, or start reacting again to normal stimuli like the sight of a cupcake? Another test asks if a patient would take an offer of $50 now or $100 if they could wait a week, checking how much motivation and self-control they can muster. You need to be able to inhibit the urge to get something to recover, Volko noted. We take for granted that people think about the future, not when you're addicted. Like in any disease, each medication may work better in certain people because not everyone's brain circuitry reacts exactly the same way to opiate abuse. But that hasn't been studied. Volker suspect buprenorphine will improve mood and emotion response to addiction better than methadone, for instance, because of subtle differences in how each medicine works. She especially wants to test people who relapse to try to spot any treatment differences. Methadone and buprenorphine are weak opiates. The reason for the misperception that they substitute one addiction for another is slightly different. In slightly different ways, they stimulate the dopamine system more mildly than other opiates, leveling out the jolt so there's no high and less craving. People may use them for years. Naltrexone, in contrast, block any opiate effect. Volga's team has screened more than 400 people who express interest in the study, but have found only about 3 dozen potential candidates who qualify, 7 of whom have enrolled so far. The main problem: study participant must have no other health problem that might affect the brain chemistry function. That rules out people who use medicines such as antidepressant and those with a range of health conditions such as high blood pressure and diabetes. Valco said it's worth the struggle to find such rare volunteers if before and after scan wind up showing truly different looking brains as people get treated. You should be able to see it with your eyes without having to be an expert. End of article there. So most naturally, this is one of those things that is good to put out there, just in case somebody knows somebody that is already in the throes, probably need treatment, but they don't have diabetes, high blood pressure, or they don't use any type of antidepressant, which is going to be a small amount of people. So a few points here from the study as we look at getting your high from beneficial things, because most actually actually saying this go back to one of the statements here that is important. I've heard this and I tend to lean this way on the statement: addiction is a brain disease, not a choice, not a personality flaw, not a moral failing. So there's choices we make along the way. All right. So the addiction part, I believe, I'm not going to say I 100% embrace this theory. Probably I 100% embrace it a month from now or a year from now. But I hear people say this over the years, and I've understand if you isolate the word addiction in itself, this is something I 100% believe that we all have an addictive side to us. It is something about what we do and where we're wired, that there's this thing that we can get into, we can get stuck. And if you ever get stuck, if you've ever been addicted or get your mind fixated on something, it's very powerful. And especially when you hit it the first time, you're like, whoa, what is this? And it could be a video game, it could be food, it could be a whole bunch of things. And you start to feel a powerlessness or that desire to want the thing, and it start to take over your mind. You know, it start popping into your head at weird situations and so forth. And you're just like, wait a minute. So this is that thing. So it is not necessarily a choice in the sense of addiction is just what it is. The choice often is what gets you into the addiction. And so this is why this type of discussion is important. You go down a certain road and you will end up in a certain place. That's the moral choice to me. The addiction part is just part of how we function. You know, it's like watching a person play a musical instrument. The brain takes over. The brain can be so trained that the fingers just move. You don't have to command it because it's almost automation. But if you have an addiction that works like that, that's a powerful mess you have on your hand. And when I say addiction, we're often talking about something that is negative, because as I say, if a person loves apples, you could say they're addicted to apples, but you would also, nobody really talk about that because it doesn't cause any damage. So that's important. So not a personality flaw. Now, some people use something and they don't get addicted, but I believe there's a drug for everybody. That's my personal belief. I believe that, if you could smoke, say, some weed, some marijuana, and it don't do anything for you, and that's not your drug. But if you keep messing about, you find something that you'll be like, oh, I like this. And that's what she was saying there, that if you keep, when you're having that, I like this, the brain is literally tell you, oh, this works, this is nice. And you do that a few more times, you'll be like, oh, I look forward to this. This make me feel good. So that would be not the flaw. That would just be how we work. Something is nice, we're like, oh, I like this, I'll eat this again. And then the person now eating 20 sushi roll at one sitting. And you say, why are you eating so much sushi roll? Oh, because I like this. And after a while, they start blimping out. They become like a big blimp because they just love sushi. That's part of it. And so that's that addictive side. It's just what you find that you like. If it's damaging, you got to watch it. Moral failing, as I say, the choice to partake of certain things that are dangerous is often the moral failing, but the addiction to it is just part of how our brain works. So, if whatever your opinion, you could tell me what it is. I'm curious. What's your opinion on that? It's important. I'm curious to hear what you think on that. And, if you have another thought, then share it with me. I'd like to hear it. I'm curious to be able to discuss that, because if it's important to note that, because of that thought, not a choice, not a personality flaw, not a moral failing, it's important to choose what brings you pleasure and to analyze it and to make sure that if it's something that can be dangerous, that you bring it into control. Because if not, it's a good thing. It can benefit you, but it could be, if it's too much of it or whatever, it could be dangerous. Another important point here is when you send something pleasurable, a special song, the touch of a loved one, food like Volko's favorite chocolate, the brain releases a natural chemical called dopamine that essentially trains the body to remember. So the body will say, if dopamine say, and the body feels good, and the body like, oh yeah, okay, that's nice. And so next time you're like, I say you're feeling down, your brain like, what could make you feel good right now is that chocolate. And you eat a chocolate, you're like, oh man, whatever bad things I was going through, forget about it. This chocolate is like making me feel good, and it don't matter what bad going on. So say you get the mail, you open the mail, you see a certain bill, and you're like, oh man, this bill makes me feel down. You grab some chocolate, and you'll be like, oh, that chocolate is so good. And your brain remember, when you're going feeling down, hit the chocolate, and you'll feel better. And then that goes the cycle. All right. If you say, man, get me some deep fried chicken, and then so the person having diabetes, but then you say, what's the problem? The problem is they have an addiction, and probably the problem is they just need to get some mental counseling. Somebody said, no, they need insulin. Well, probably they need that too, but they probably need some counseling and stuff like that to help them not be so depressed, because when they go depressed, they go for the chicken, and the chicken make them feel good. So when everything bad in their life, the fried chicken is the solution for their problem. That's the thing that they eat to hit the dopamine receptors. So there's not like a bucket of chicken, and so forth and so on. So when you send something pleasurable, like a song, so this is why, like, if you think about it, like, you have a certain songs that it could bring back a certain memory of a certain experience when you were at a certain place. Now, I could hear this song and thinking that song is trash. That song is not that good. But the person listening to the song like, yeah, it's not that good, but I can't tell you, but there was something that the song was playing and having a certain experience, and a certain experience bring me to a nice place. And so every time I hear that song, it brings me back and it makes me feel good, because that was a good time. It was a good place in my life. And that's what it is. And I hear the song and I'm like, I don't get it. This song is like trash. So, a certain touch of a loved one. So if you experience that touch, and touch was a regular touch, and that touch brought you pleasure, and also the loved one passed away, then the person say, I was somewhere by myself. I felt lonely, afraid, and I felt that harm came around me and hugged my shoulder. And that told me a loved one was still around. They're still looking over me. They came back from their spirit came and hugged me and comforted me. And you realize, yeah, you really love when a person that hug you. And the person feel good. And it's the natural chemical release, and they have a good feeling inside, and it's therapy for them. So that's some of the thoughts there about addiction, right? So you see, this is where the issue is, and this is where I say one has to watch. What is it that brings you pleasure? Because if you make a choice to say use cocaine, and the cocaine now is what picks you up and make you feel good, well, that thing is going to cause some damage to the brain, because as it says here, hopefully I have that highlighted also, Well, I'll go back to this. So what the problem is now is that the part of the brain now that lets out that feel good, that dopamine or whatever that feel good chemical is, and trigger that surge, the when the body intakes say opiate or whatever these drugs, it increase, whether it be dope or dopamine or whatever, it increases it much more than normal. It makes it release way higher, so the person feel high as the sky, and the person now has a very high. And so now it says later on that it is that trigger that would be released, that now the opiate will do is trigger it so high that it's unnatural, and the person now start to chase that high. But what happened, she said also, that eventually the person start to feel gradually, the brain gradually release less dopamine in response to other things the person once found pleasurable. And this is true. So now, as later on in the article says, before the person say we see a cupcake and they'll be like get excited, oh, I want that cupcake, and the dopamine say, the receptors in the body and everything say, go get it, go get it. And the person say, yeah, I'm gonna get it, and they get it, and they're like, oh yeah, this is a good feeling. Now, because of the opiate, the person will see the cupcake and be like, they ain't doing nothing for me, I need some drugs. So now on recovery, they want to see now that if the person sees a picture of the cupcake after they're using methadone or buprenorphine, does the person's brain start light up again when they see cupcake? Or does the brain really light up when they see some heroin? They're like, that's the good stuff. I always remember I was at a church doing a health seminar, and somehow I left. I had to bring a lighter, and there was this gentleman there, and one of the brethren there, and he was like, I was like, man, I didn't bring a lighter, and I can't light the stove to do the cooking. And the person said, oh yeah, I have a lighter, and he went in the pocket and bring me a lighter. And I'm like, how you go in the pocket and grab me a lighter? He didn't have to even search for it. He just like, oh, here we go. And he gave me a lighter. So I was like, okay. So then I remember a few weeks later, I'm talking to him, and I was talking to him about marijuana, about, the not, the negatives of marijuana. We just do casual conversation come up, and something was said, and then I went off into a whole bunch of talk about marijuana. So he looks at me and he says, man, you're talking about that stuff, and man, that stuff is nice. That stuff, I could taste it while you talk. And I was like, really, you can taste it while I talk? And I wasn't talking about the benefits of it or how good it was. I was just talking about it in general. But just me bringing it up, you can see the change. He's like, wow. He said, I can literally taste it while you're talking. And I'm like, okay, I guess I better change the conversation. He's not into that mode of abstaining from any of that stuff. His receptors are telling him, go get some. A side note. So the brain gradually releases less dopamine in response to other things that a person once find pleasurable. So probably if I was talking to that same person and I was talking to them about, something else that they used to find pleasurable, like I would say, hey, look, I like going kayaking, I like kayaking and blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, I used to like that. But you can see they have no interest in the conversation. But before they would be like all in that conversation. But now it's like, yeah, that don't do nothing for me. I don't even want to talk about that. Let's talk about how I can go downtown and get some drugs. See, that's how it works. And that's where, you getting offbeat. Have you ever been in a situation where you deal with a person and you're like, say, okay, like an example of that is like, say, Sabbath or say an event. And you say, well, the event is going to be plant-based. There's going to be no meat. And the person say, wow, I can't do that. Like they literally start to look like they're going to withdraw. Like they can't imagine a meal where it's celebratory and there is no, stake. It's like celebration. You can't, if it's, I guess if it's just like breakfast, like a donut or something. But it's just if you're having an event, the event has to have meat, it has to have alcohol, and somebody better have on the table some drugs they can use in the bathroom. That's not an event. I'm sure you've dealt with that type of situation where people associate holidays, vacation with high amount of certain foods, meat primarily, alcohol, and drugs, and other things. That's what you do that for. It's like, why would I go? It's like the concept of why go on vacation if there's no white powder. So the brain knows, I'll wait, because this is part of now the next thing I want to talk about. So the cues and the fixation on cues related to drugs, but this can be related to anything. The cues. You could say, we're gonna do such and such and such, and the person like, yeah, I'm not. That's not interesting. You say, okay, we're gonna do such and such, but it's gonna be food. There's gonna be lots of it. The person like, yeah, I love that event. I want to come to that event. And you're like, okay, but if we do the event without food, you come? Nah, not interested. So you're interested in the event, the activity? Not really. Just want the food. So it's those cues, and if you can cue them up, and this is what drug dealers know also. I'm gonna cue you up because I know what stimulates you. So another test they said they did, they asked the patient if they would take an offer of $50 now or $100 if they could wait a week, checking how much motivation and self-control they can muster. So I don't know if there's two things going on here, because I could see two things going on here, right? One thing could be going on is that they're checking to see how the patient is motivated, period, even for something else other than drugs. So they say, hey, look, we give you $50 now or $100 later. Does the patient even get excited? Does the brain light up like, oh, I'm gonna get $50, I'm getting a reward? All right. Or does the patient, reward, motivation, whatever it is, or does the patient have the self-control to say, well, $100 later is better than $50 now? Because that's important when it comes down to self-control, because when a patient is coming off drugs, what we understand is the person brain is still not releasing dopamine for, say, that $50. While before, if you put the $50 down and say, hey, $50, and the person really, okay, I'm motivated. And now, like, the $50 don't motivate them. Unless I guess the $50 to buy more drugs, then it motivates them. So what happens? Does the person have the self-control to say, a week later, get 100 or get 50 now and no more to next week? What would motivate a person? Because the person have to hold back. And the person has to stop, because what it is that need to be trained into a person is the ability to stop themselves, to deny themselves, to have some self-control. Because if you can't stop yourself, there's no sins, including sexual immorality, all kind of weirdness, you will not be able to stop. And this is why, as I say, drugs is important study, because there's this addictive side that it could be so many different things that we could get ourselves addicted to, and we can't hold ourselves back. We probably even desire to, but the strength is not there. So to me, the drugs is one part of it for the rehabilitation of the person. But a bigger thing is for the person to practice self-control, because if you can't hold yourself back, which is something I found out recently, that even a lot of opiate patients and heroin patients, they have obesity problem. They have high incidence of obesity, which would make sense because the person is losing self-control in all aspects of their lives. They can't hold themselves back. And so, but it's the same for, it could be that the person started out with just food, and they went from food to hard drugs because they can't hold themselves back. So I'll read this real quickly here before I move on to some of the thoughts that I want to talk about first at a time. You need to be able to inhibit the urge to get something. We take for granted that people think about the future, not when you're addicted. So an addicted person is thinking about here and now. But think about it. What do we always say about our society and about humans in general? We're in the here and now. We can't hold ourselves back. Whatever we want it now. And when we get it now, then whatever we want, whatever is on that list that's number two, we say, okay, we want that now also. And we can't hold ourselves back. And this can be the start of a problem. We get into getting into a lot of people get into a shopping habit where they constantly shop because it's that pleasure. They get a deal and it lights up their mind and they become addicted. You might see the person and thinking, oh, they're just making bad choices, but really what it is, they're addicted. And there's a lot of people who are shopping holics, are shopaholics. I don't know how you call it. And they're just as addicted as the person with the opiate problem. And they're just running up debts. And somebody's like, oh yeah, you need to know the budget. You could put them on the most sophisticated budgeting software and have everything inputted for them, and they could input it themselves. That's not the problem. The problem is that they're going to have to learn to exercise self-control. They can't stop themselves. And they have to go practice methods and means of self-control. Else they're just, because the person could say, oh no, what I do, I go to the dollar store. No, they have a problem. They're going to go to the dollar store and spend as much as they would spend at one of the big box retailers or one of the shopping center retail outlets. It just doesn't matter. It's just the idea. It's just the buying and the reward of, oh, look at all the things I get, all the goodies. I'd be like, you mean all the plastic junk? And it's just a shopping thing. I'm sure you drive past these antique shopping area. It's just people's junk from their basement and their cellar. But people like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get something. It's like you mean some old rusty metal and some rotten wood. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Love the scent of that stuff. So this is just in all this thing. So when we talk about getting into things that are not as dangerous, it's the same thing we were talking about, because an appetite is just a desire for something that you want to be satisfied. And the desire, you have to either find a desire that's something that you do that is not damaging, it's not going to ruin you, or it's something that is very beneficial, that the more you do it, is the more healthier you become. And you make that become your practice. So in Proverbs 24 verse 13, we have a very important principle here. Proverbs 24 verse 13, it says, my son, eat thou honey, because it is good, and the honeycomb which is sweet to thy taste. So the honeycomb which is sweet to thy taste. So that it's good. This is something that is positively good. But here the Bible, as you know, teaches very, very important principle that some things you partake of it, but you shouldn't overdo it. Notice it says here in verse 16, hast thou found honey? Eat so much as is sufficient for thee, lest thou be filled therewith and vomit. So that's telling you right there that honey shouldn't be overly eaten, And I'm taking this as a principle also. And that the principle is that some things you partake of, but you have to limit it, because if you do it too much, it can become damaging to the system. Here, you will take a whole jar of honey or tube of honey and just pour it down your throat. I don't know if it could cause vomiting. I just take the text for what it says. I guess it will vomit. You'll vomit it out. I'm not sure if you say literally, or you just have like a colic reaction. I don't know if that's what you call it here, where you have like, you eat, if you see a kid, they eat a whole bunch of food, they eat everything, they throw everything in their stomach, and after a while they go blah, and it just send it right back up, and you're like, oh, you can see it coming, because you're telling child, hey, look, knock it off, you're eating too much variety right there. And they just carving it down, they inhaling the food, and it comes right back up, and you're like, yeah, I can tell you. So I could imagine just having that thick, pasty, syrupy honey, and just pour it down your throat. Never tried this. I've tried other things. I remember years back when I started learning about the health message and stuff. I read a statement that it's not good to drink high school water. So I'm like, Okay. So one day I was at the water fountain that had like the cold water coming out. And I had a whole, I think it was like 24 ounce or 32 ounce. I can't remember which one it was of water bottle. And I say, I'm going to test this thing out. So I fill it up and I'm by my, there in my own head. And I just drink it down one gulp, just glunk, 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 just the whole thing as cold as possible. And no matter how punish it, cold to my mouth it was in my throat, I just doused the whole thing. I say I want to see, because of that, this I read the statement, you shouldn't drink it cold. It shocked the system, and you know what it did? It shocked my system. I doubled over. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, it's true. I was like, I was probably 22 at the time. I was like, I just wanted to see, because I read Energy Wise says it will shock the system, and I'm like, let's see this if it does. So I just, I'm learning. So I'm like, let's learn this in practical. So I just gulp it down, and I just stood there, and all of a sudden there's this pain hit my stomach, and my stomach started cramping up, and I was like, wow, and I had to like bend over and hold in my stomach. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, it works. But I was in pain, like severe pain. I was like, oh, that's not good. I never did it again. I just want to tell you, but I was being young and foolish, and just like, let me try that just to see. And it taught me, yeah, I guess whatever she's saying is true. 'Cause when you're reading that type of stuff, people say, oh no, that person is a false prophet. She don't know what she's talking about. So I said, let me try something what she say. And that was interesting because you grow up, you get ice with water because especially tropical countries, very hot, and I did that here. So it was summertime, so it was hot. So I was like, let's try this. I'm hot. I don't know if I was playing baseball at the time, and I said, let me try this. Not baseball, basketball. All right. So verse 27 says, in Proverbs 25 verse 27, I'd read Proverbs 25 verse 16. And also before that, I read Proverbs 24, verse 13. So the Proverbs 25, verse 27 says, it is not good to eat much honey, for man to search out his own glory, it is not glory. So it is not good to eat much honey, and then he's saying that other part is a very important principle also. There's a certain point where, you make somebody praise you. Anyhow, so it is not good to eat much honey, right? So this again, you see, very important thing. There's things in the Bible that is very clear. Fruits, number one, the main thing. You eat, if you get up today and say, all I'm going to have is watermelon, you ain't doing nothing wrong. And if that brings you pleasure, you're going to have like a feast. I don't know if you ever hear about like a juice fast, and then you could do like a juice and raw feast, where you just spend a few $100s and just buy, whatever you can buy organic raw. And you just have a feast. You juice, you eat salad, smoothies, nut shakes, nut fruit shakes. You do juice, you do all kind of stuff. You just have a feast. So you could do that for a few days, you could do that for a week, whatever you want to do. And you just flush your system and flood your system with high amounts of nutrients, as much as you can partake of. And you do a feast and blow yourself out of the water with it. And when you finish, how it's going to happen? Your skin's going to look better. Your brain's going to work better. Your kidney, your liver, your heart, your colon, your intestine, your whole body's going to be like, ooh, this is good. I like that. And you have a feast. And your body will be blessed. But now if you flip that now, and you do what he says here, you eat honey and just gulp it down, your body's going to be affected negatively. If you take brown sugar, you just mix a whole vat of brown sugar, you pour some lemon juice and some passion fruit and all that stuff in it, you gulp it down. At first it's going to be great, but as you keep gulping it down, gallon after gallon, your body is going to react negatively. Your immune system is going to react negatively. You're going to shut your immune system down and weaken your immune system. All that brown sugar. But you drink a cup of it, it's not doing anything much negative to you. 2 cups is alright. But there's a certain point where you have to limit that stuff, and you'll be alright. So you can eat some brown sugar, but you can't do too much of that. But if you take now the cane juice, you drink it, that's beautiful. You pour some lemon juice in there, a little lemon, squeeze the lemon, you drink that cane juice. It's like you're having a fresh lemonade. You take boxes of mango, you just eat the mango till the mango is running down the juice or the pulp of the mango is running down to your elbow, dripping off your chin. You take the skin and rub the skin, make sure it's organic or naturally grown, and rub the skin in your face and give yourself a mango therapy. Rub it around your neck, and you just carve down boxes of it. Not gonna do anything. And if you've come to a point where you don't need drugs, but a box or two of mango is your pleasure and the thing that lights up your brain, you're on the way to looking fabulous and feeling fabulous. If now you need like a bucket of chicken for you to feel good, you're on your way to feel like trash, to look like garbage, and you're just going to feel terrible, and you're going to be on your way to diabetes and high blood pressure and mental health problem and Alzheimer's, all kind of junk. You're going to be on your way. You're going to feel like junk because you're eating all that junk. You see, that's just the difference. You're just substituting. You're getting your highs, your kicks, your benefits of things that are beneficial. That's all it is. And when you do this, you find that you'll be so blessed. If you find great pleasure in jumping in a canoe and going on a lake or going whatever, and you can make that your pleasure. You gotta make something your pleasure. Because I know this is why I think in the church a lot of time we can focus so much on what is bad that you forget what is good, and you don't do what is good, and after a while you're bored. And I'm telling you, boredom can be a destruction. It's destructive. So you don't want to get to that point. You want to be able to swap out. Say, I'm going to pick up something new. Pick up a bicycle. Go get yourself a bicycle. Start riding. And start enjoying a bicycle ride and hearing the birds as you go by. And concentrate. Concentrate on the birds. Listen for the birds. Look at the trees as you're going by. I wonder, what is the secret of that tree? I'd like to know. And preoccupy your mind with something good. And you'll find that if you start gaining pleasure in that, then you swap out, you substitute, you swap out the bad and you take something good. You just need to make a swap, make a switch. But you can't just drop. It's always negative to drop something without switching out to something new. It has to be a new activity, and a new activity that is connected to pleasure, to a reward. Remember, the Lord says, I will reward you if you diligently seek me. So the Lord is into reward. We're created. That's the other thing too with addiction. It's the way God created us. We're created to like rewards. We're still like, we're in the image of God. You see it in the animal very clear. You tell a dog, lay down and roll over and jump and stand up on your tail. And the dog does that. I never seen that, but I'm just saying. The dog does that. You say, here's a biscuit. But it's the same thing with us. The Lord know that, hey, we like biscuits too. So you swap something out. You switch. You don't just give up things. I've known people that do that and their life is miserable because they didn't find another activity. And so they're trying to maintain self-control. And it's too much. Self-control has its place, but you need to go find some pleasure in something new, a new activity. Move. There's a lot of people, they're in an area and it's a messed up area and it's part of their mess and they don't want to move away from it. Man, go find somewhere else that is going to be pleasurable for you and you'll love it. Just absolutely love it. Matthew 16 verse 24 through 26. Matthew 16 verse 24 through 26 says, Then Jesus said unto his disciple, If any man will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. And the rest of it, whosoever, I'll read it. It says, For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, and whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it. For what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for a soul? So what are you going to give? And over the years, you're like, It's not. Nothing is worth it, because even the things that, think about it, things that people will sell their soul for, everything that somebody will sell their soul for, ain't worth it. It's not. They're bad anyhow. Somebody will be like, oh no, I can't be a Christian. Why? I need to take coke. I need to drink alcohol. Okay, that. Why am I sell myself for that? I need to be a thief. I need to steal stuff. Okay, that's you're gonna say so for that. There's just nothing out there that you think about that people sell their soul for that is really worthwhile. I need to sell my soul for a bucket of fried chicken. Why? It's a bucket of fried chicken. You don't need to. Is this not all that? Oh, this woman over here, she's so hot. She ain't that hot. Stop it. You need to gather yourself and gain control. I don't know what you're talking about. So it is foolish. You people. There's a lot of stuff that it might look hot, on the surface, but it ain't all that hot. It may be hot with some disease, but it's not all that hot. And this is the reality. So it is watch, learn, and give. And I've thought about that question over there, because this is a brilliant question he asks, or inspired question. What? You can find just as, you can go running and your body will release that feel good chemical. You could exercise, and when you exercise, that good feeling of feeling hard and feeling fit and looking good. And you have to basically pull yourself away from the mirror because you look good. That you can find pleasure in other things. But somebody be like, oh, I can't give up this thing. Yeah, because you don't understand. You need to switch and find pleasure in something else that is not damaging to the system. But somebody like, oh no, I can't give up this bucket of chicken because I love to go in the mirror and look at my 250, 300-pound self. I don't know what it's all about. In Romans chapter 8, verse 12 and 13, therefore, brethren, we are debtors not to the flesh, to live after the flesh. For if you live after the flesh, you shall die. But if ye through the Spirit do mortify the deeds of the body, ye shall live. And so Matthew 16 and Romans 8 here, it's very important to understand that. Remember, the Lord that created Adam, first he gave him a work to do, put him in a garden, gave him animals to take care of, gave him natural beauty of the flowers and so forth, and the trees. He gave him a wife, gave him things to keep him happy. And as I often say, people do all the drugs in the world, and when it's all said and done, they kill themselves because they're depressed. And you say, why are you depressed? They say, oh, because I don't have no relationships. Well, you see, there's other things to keep you happy. Having friends and stuff like that, that'll keep you happy. You could find pleasure in things that is what Adam and Eve was given to find pleasure. The other stuff is just a bunch of poison and dope and garbage that not going to keep you happy. And so here in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 12, it says here, all things are lawful unto me, but all things are not expedient. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any. All these things is trying to bring us under power. And what you find is that if you eat a box of mangoes, you're not going to be under the power of it. That's just the reality. But when drugs and alcohol, it will control you. And so things that will control you have to be very careful of. In Matthew 12, verse 30 and 31, it says, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. This is the first commandment. And the second is like, namely this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these. No other commandment greater than these. You love God with all your heart, you'll be blessed. You'll be so happy. You'll be so in self-control. You love your neighbor as yourself. You'll do nothing that will cause your neighbor harm. And so you love yourself, you love your neighbor, you love your God. God will bless you. And this is a blessed life that the Lord wants to have us. We want to be getting our highs from things that are beneficial. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, I thank you for the blessings of today, of your word. Pray that it may be with us as we go the rest of this day, and truly that we may find things to switch out and to swap out and to substitute that are pleasurable and are blessing, but are not addictive and dangerous to our life, and whether it be our spiritual, social, or mental life. Bless us towards this end, we pray for Christ's sake. Amen. Well, thanks for being with me here on Revive Reform Radio. Looking forward to talking to you again live tomorrow morning, where we should talk about current events. Until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with the King.